Hi everyone! Today I want to talk about another big mistake that I've been making while decluttering and trying to live more minimally. So in my last video I talked about how we can justify keeping things that are unnecessary in case we might need them someday. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it down below. But the mistake I'm sharing with you today is equally detrimental, and that is when we say we could never get rid of something because it is too sacred. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. If you've seen any of my house tours, you might have noticed that we've lived in several different countries, and along the way we've collected many different mementos. And one day I was feeling frustrated with the amount of sentimental items that I still own, and I decided I wanted to try and make a go box. A single, curated box of only my most cherished items. The kind of thing I could just throw in my car if a hurricane was coming. I really wanted to see what that would look like for me, and I hoped it would give me the courage to dump whatever didn't make the cut. It was very easy to pick out my most treasured items. It seemed like I instinctively knew somehow which items sparked the most joy. But I was also left with many questions. What made some sentimental items more important than others? Most of the things didn't have any value or usefulness, so why were the things in this box so untouchable? Why would these be the first things I'd grab if my house was on fire? Why is this stuff so sacred? Today I'm going to talk about a few examples of the types of items I've mistakenly made sacred, why it's so hard to get rid of these items once we've deemed them as sacred, and the single statement that can help you demote these things to their rightful place if you want to. So what kind of things can be regarded as sacred? Well, anything really. It is only us who gives it that status. I'm sure none of you are looking at my box and thinking, oh, what treasure! I'd love to have that for myself. Things can be regarded as sacred for different reasons. Once you lose a body of information, it's difficult to rebuild. If you lose mementos, they're gone forever. Books are books, and food is food, and both should be treated with respect. I thought about what types of items I have personally made sacred that probably shouldn't be, and have a few examples to share with you. I was certified to scuba dive in college, and this was the textbook. The information inside is pretty particular to the certification I have. I remember very little from that course as it was over 10 years ago, and I haven't done much diving since. But I would definitely want to brush up before a future dive trip, as scuba diving can be somewhat dangerous if you don't know exactly what you're doing. There are no online copies, and this book is out of print. I haven't opened this book since university, not once. Yet I have deemed this book as sacred because it's a body of information that once lost would be difficult for me to regain. Do you see my dilemma? These are all the notes I took during my language study in Cambodia. At the time of my Peace Corps service, there were no resources commercially available to learn the Khmer language. Furthermore, these are my personal notes specific to my own instruction. But look at them. They are so ratty and disorganized. I don't want to spend the time to recopy them. I can't even be bothered to scan them in their current state. I rarely use the language, yet I still haven't been able to let go of them. It would be very difficult to rebuild this resource if I decided I wanted to brush up on my speaking skills one day. Now this next one isn't so obvious. At first I thought there was no food items in my home that I was treating as sacred, but I was wrong. Earlier this year I was tired of paying so much for individual 1-pound bags of black beans and decided to take the plunge on a 25-pound bag. However, unlike the beans from my supermarket, these beans must have been very old, because no matter what I tried, they took forever to cook, were highly unpredictable, and never came out very nice at all. 6 months went by without eating a single bean, yet the bag is still taking up precious space in my kitchen. Not because it was expensive, but for no other reason than we are taught that we shouldn't waste food. Some people do this by storing leftovers that, if they were honest, they have no intention to eat. We literally wait until the food goes bad before we toss it. So this is how we can treat food as sacred. I'm not advocating that we purposefully waste food, just that we shouldn't be diluting our own sense of waste in this way. If you lose mementos, they're gone forever. This was one of only a handful of gifts that we received from our wedding. It is part of a set, and since the brand was higher end, we always joke that it's our wedding china. Of course, as they are so fragile, they've always been difficult to travel with, and we have always had to carry them as hand luggage when we moved countries. Well, it was when we were leaving Malaysia that we heard the sound of crunching glass in the X-ray machine. Although we said we would replace it, it has been 5 years already, and we have yet to do so. It is a single, lonely glass that is forever too tall to fit in any cabinets and is almost never used. Yet we have both deemed it as sacred, and it is still with us to this day for no other reason than that. So in the book The Art of Discarding, Tatsumi says, "The real reason you can't get rid of it is that you have some dependence on it. She also talks about how once we possess an item, in a way it becomes a part of us. She says that there is a feeling that self-realization is achieved through having the things we want. And if we lose something that we've obtained, we feel pain at losing part of the self we've built up. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. She says that people's desire to have possessions is just a part of our human nature. In my example, the scuba book and the language notes represent an accomplishment that I had made into part of my identity. I'm a scuba diver. I'm adventurous. I'm brave. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I can speak another language. So even though I no longer use those items, there must be some part of me that feels like if I let them go, I somehow also let go of those pieces of myself. So in that sense, if you can realize that you are not your stuff, that you exist separately from your stuff, that even without any stuff at all, you intrinsically have value, that your stuff doesn't define you, that you can still have memories without the physical item, then you might have the perspective you need to downgrade your attachment to a particular item if you want to. So what's the solution? I know from my own experience how frustrating it can be when almost everything feels sacred. You might feel discouraged or wonder why it's so difficult for you to let go of stuff when it seems so easy for someone else. Sometimes it can even feel like you are a prisoner of your own stuff. Tatsumi says, "Whatever reason you have for regarding something as sacred, remember, it's only you that is giving it that status. Nobody else regards it as untouchable." So here is the single remedy that has helped me to change my own perspective about sacred items. To stop seeing things as sacred, you have to tell yourself one thing. When I'm dead, it will all be trash. That item we feel is so sacred, someone else will regard as trash, and one day, it will actually be trash. This logic helped me realize that nothing is actually sacred. When we elevate an item to that status, we are only doing so in our own heads. And just as we have the ability to promote it, we also have the ability to demote it. And that doesn't mean we should demote everything or get rid of everything. It just means we have options. It's another tool we can use when we're decluttering and trying to be more mindful with our possessions. If you think about the examples I shared earlier, these are not things I love or use. These are things I've been keeping for no other reason than at some point in my life I decided they were sacred. Yet none of those items would ever make it into my go box, and they aren't even that special to me. Making stuff sacred is a natural tendency. It isn't even always a bad thing. We just need to be aware of it and know that we are in control of it. For me, simply being sacred isn't reason enough for me to keep something anymore. I need to also either love it or use it. What are those things that you could never get rid of? Or like me, are there other things you have subconsciously made sacred that actually really need to go? Leave a comment and let me know down below. Thanks for watching.